Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times, a Prancing Pony podcast production. I'm the Man of the West, and it is time to keep Series 13 and Week 100 going. Now, we are finally done with the 4 weeks of Tolkien's quite understandable frustrations with the Swedish translator of The Lord of the Rings, and are moving back today into another one of his wonderful lore letters. Now, I've mentioned Rhona Beare before. In fact, we spent 5 weeks on Tolkien Tuesdays back in November of 2024 and January of 2025, looking at letters 211 and 212, written by Tolkien in response to a series of questions from Dr. Beare. That pair of letters, 211 was the letter as sent, 212 was a draft continuation, were written in 1958, and they answered 6 deep lore questions. But now that a few years have passed, more questions have arisen. Just a quick reminder that Beare was an English author and scholar who corresponded with Tolkien while she was at Exeter University. She went on to write a number of articles on Tolkien and has been published in Amon Hen, Parma El Delambaron, and more. Now, unlike Letter 211, we are not provided with the actual questions in the editorial header, but the answers will give us a good clue. First, she seems to have asked a question about Aragorn's claim in The Steward and the King, where Gandalf is telling now King Elessar that the time comes of the dominion of men, and that Gandalf would be leaving soon. Aragorn then says, "But I shall die, for I am a mortal man, and though being what I am, and of the race of the West unmingled, I shall have life far longer than other men, yet that is but a little while." Now, it's a good question, because that claim that Aragorn's blood is of the West unmingled is a big one. Tolkien clarifies that Aragorn, quote, was reckoning his ancestry through the paternal line for this purpose, before then adding that Númenóreans, before their knowledge dwindled, knew more about heredity than other people. To this, of course, they refer by the common symbol of blood. They recognize the fact that in spite of intermarriages, some characteristics would appear in pure form in later generations. And in fact, Tolkien says that Aragorn's own long life was an example of this pure form of Númenórean characteristics. He also mentions Gandalf, referring to the curious fact that even in the much less well-preserved House of the Stewards, Denethor had come out as almost purely Númenórean. Well, that is a reference to Gandalf telling Pippin, after their first encounter with Denethor, that "he is not as other men of this time, Pippin, and whatever be his descent from father to son, by some chance the blood of Westernesse runs nearly true in him, as it does in his other son Faramir, and yet did not in Boromir, whom he loved best." So clearly, heredity in a technical sense doesn't have anything to do with it. It's just a reference to the characteristics, the traditional Númenórean characteristics that would be carried down. Now, the remainder of the questions are language-related. Her first one appears to have been a question about a couple of Treebeard's lines in his eponymous chapter. Pippin had asked the Ent why Celeborn had warned them against going into Fangorn Forest. Treebeard's response includes this: "Laurlendornen lindelorendor malenornelion ornmalen," he hummed to himself. "They are falling rather behind the world in there, I guess," he said. "Neither this country, nor anything else outside the Golden Wood, is what it was when Celeborn was young. Still, Taurle Lomea, Tumbile Morna, Tumbile Taurea Lomeanor. That is what they used to say. Things have changed, but it is still true in places." Tolkien first points out that Treebeard was not using Entish sounds here, but rather was, quote, using ancient Elvish words mixed up and run together, as Ents tend to do with most any language. When Tolkien says ancient Elvish here, though, he is referring to Quenya, not to Sindarin. And the next bit really gives us a glorious look at the construction of Quenya words, element by element. Tolkien explains in his letter, the elements are laure, gold, not the metal, but the color, what we should call golden light. Indor, nor, land, country. Lin, lind, a musical sound. Malina, yellow. Orne, tree. Lor, dream. Nan, or nand, valley. So that roughly he means the valley where the trees in a golden light sing musically, a land of music and dreams. There are yellow trees there. It is a tree-yellow land. Now that is a breakdown of the first of Treebeard's Quenya lines, Laurelen dornen lindelorendor malenor nelion ornemalin. But Tolkien does the same thing for Treebeard's second line. Taurle lomea tumbele morna tumbele taurea lomeanor, writing that the same applies to the last line on that page, where the elements are taure, forest, tumba, deep valley, mor, darkness, lome, night. Now, Tolkien doesn't then connect it all together here in the letter like he did for the first set of lines, but Appendix F tells us that this line can be rendered forest mini-shadowed, deep valley black, deep valley forested, gloomy land, by which Treebeard meant, more or less, there is a black shadow in the deep dales of the forest. Now, we also get in this letter the definition of the best-known Sindarin greeting, and perhaps the most mispronounced. Tolkien writes simply that "my govanen" means well met, and indeed it does. Just remember that the AE diphthong is pronounced, according to Appendix F, as the vowels in English rai, not ray. So, my govanen, not me govanen. Now, still on the language front, Beare asks about another thing Treebeard says, but this time from many partings. Then Treebeard said farewell to each of them in turn, and he bowed 3 times slowly and with great reverence to Celeborn and Galadriel. It is long, long since we met by stock or by stone. Ah, Vanimar, Vanimalion Nostari, he said. Well, Tolkien translates that for her, and also us, so yay. As, O beautiful ones, parents of beautiful children. Brief digression, he definitely uses the plural, Nostari, but Galadriel and Celeborn had only one child, Celebrian. Now, this could be simply metaphorical, children in general, not just descendants, but people that follow after them. Or it could be a reference to all of their descendants, including the descendants of Celebrian. Those would be Elladan, Elrohir, and Arwen. Or, and I'm wondering, it might even be a lingering reference to the brief time when Tolkien had imagined Amroth as the son of Galadriel and Celeborn. I'm still thinking it's just the descendants, though. It's the Elladan, Elrohir, and Arwen. Finally, Beare has asked for some insight on the Song of Praise heard by the hobbits on the field of Cormallen. Long live the halflings, praise them with great praise. Cuyo I Feriain Anan, Aglarni Feriannath, praise them with great praise, Frodo and Samwise. Dower a Berhail, Conan and Annun, Eglerio, praise them, Eglerio. Elaitete, Andeve Laituvalmet, praise them. Cormer Colindor, Elaita Tarienna, praise them. The ring-bearers praise them with great praise. Now, he explains in the letter that this isn't a song, per se. Instead, it's actually a written representation of some of the phrases heard by different people there, English representing Westron as usual. Some of the lines are Sindarin. Tolkien says that Cuyo I Feriain Annan, Aglarni Feriannath means, may the halflings live long, glory to the halflings, while Daur a Berhail, Conan and Annun, Eglerio means Frodo and Sam, princes of the West, glorify them. But there are also 2 Quenya lines, Elaitete, Andeve Laituvalmet, which Tolkien says means, bless them, long will we praise them, and Corma Colindor Elaita Tarienna, which he says means, the ring-bearers bless or praise them to the heights. And yes, this was a Tolkien Tuesday, not a Word Nerd Wednesday. But a big thank you to Professor Tolkien for giving us those wonderful details, and to Rhona Beare for asking great questions. For now, this wraps up this week's Tolkien Tuesday. Be sure to join me again next week when we'll move quickly through 4 short letters, including one to Tolkien's 90-year-old aunt and one to his 16-year-old granddaughter. In the meantime, please visit patreon.com/TolkienTimes to learn how you can join the Content Council, get an ad-free feed, and a bonus episode every week. And please, join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times for Word Nerd Wednesday. Subscribe to the TTT in your podcast apps or to the PPP channel on YouTube, and be sure you're following @PrancingPonyPod on social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.